In round 6 of the European Team Chess Championship, the Netherlands, the Dutch national team clashed with the English national team, and on board 1, Jorden van Foreest for the Dutch team was facing the newcomer or the new acquisition of England, Nikita Vitiugov from Russia. And as it will turn out, White will try to catch Black already in the opening, but this will backfire. So, this being said, let's just go to the game. Jorden van Foreest starts the game with first c4 and Nikita Vitiugov responds with knight to f6. White follows up with knight to c3 and e5 by Black, a transposition into one of the main lines of the English, which can be also reached with a different move order if Black plays e5 here immediately. However, we have the position with knight c3 and knight to f6, and knight to f3 played, and now knight to c6, and now a very standard move would be g3, then Black would probably go for d5, then c takes d5, knight takes d5, and we have some sort of reversed accelerated dragon where White is a tempo up compared to the Black main line. But Jorden van Foreest had prepared another move for this position, and this is the incredible rare queen to c2. And Nikita Vitiugov seemed to knew what he is doing and played g6, which is the main move here. White followed up with g3, then bishop to g7, bishop g2, Black castles, and White plays d3, and Black plays d6. What else? This bishop wants to join the game. White castles, and now Black needs to find the plan, and he comes up with something, with a very standard plan for similar structures. He wants to exchange this fianchettoed bishop. So bishop to g4 by Black, White plays e3, and Black, as mentioned earlier, wants to trade the bishops and plays queen to d7. Basically saying that he is going after this bishop. White plays a3, then follows bishop h3. And White plays b4. Now again it's Black's turn, what to play here. And Black wants to play on the king side. The queen side is probably the place where White wants to play. And the king side, so basically here, is the place where Black will play. So knight h5, bishop to b2 played. However, this might have been a little bit less clever than the following idea with b5, because b5 forces the knight to move, so the control over d4 is weakened, and now White continues with d4. And now Black will most likely exchange, and the position is equal. But let's go back. In the game, bishop to b2 was played, as mentioned. Now followed bishop takes g2, exchanging the fianchettoed bishops. King takes g2, and now f5. And suddenly you see, if White plays d4, then will follow e4, and the pawn is protected. In this variation, it wasn't possible to push the pawn to e4 because the square is covered twice. So now let's go back to the game. So f5 played, and White decides to play rook a to e1. And now the question is, what should Black do? Well, as mentioned earlier, Black wants to play on the king side, but so far he has only a knight on h5, which isn't very active yet and might need some support. This bishop might join, but later in the game. The queen might also find a square on g4, or later even h3 if the king moves away. So what black is doing is basically he's lacking pieces on the king side, so he's transferring the knight with knight to d8 to the king side. And now white thinks black weakened the control over the center with knight to d8, which white could have achieved with b5 earlier in the game, and therefore white plays d4. However, as mentioned, this pawn is already on f5 and black is ready to play e4. And now it becomes clear that black is going to go to hunt down the white king, or at least he's going to try to do that. So knight to f7. Now we see the knight is ready to jump to h6 or g5. g5 looks much more active, so this will be probably the square where the knight wants to jump to. b5 played anyway without the knight on c6. We could have achieved a similar position but without this e4 pawn, but the exchange on d4 as highlighted earlier. So it's difficult to understand what white is trying to do. And now black plays rook a e8, bringing the rook into the game. White plays a4 and now follows knight to g5, and it becomes clear that sooner or later there might be ideas like f4, which is a standard push in such positions, or ideas like knight to f3. And now the best move of white is king to h1. It's very difficult to find, especially because the king doesn't look very supported on h1 and very lonely. But interestingly, ideas such as f4 do not work out that well because the pawn can be simply taken like this. But let's go back. And additionally, there would be a lot of pressure on e4. But let's go back. Instead, in the game, rook to g1 was played, which is a big mistake because now the f4 break is working indeed. So what is the idea of f4? f4. We will see it in one moment. E takes f4. So the knight is attacked. Black is down a pawn. And now knight takes f4 check. And suddenly we see the king is getting weakened. Additionally, the f2 square is very weak. The knight on d2 is not well placed. And white is already in big trouble. Because after g takes f4, this rook takes f4. And now black is basically winning. White tries rook to e3, controlling the squares here. However, after bishop takes d4, it becomes clear that f2 and e3 are very weak points. So king to h1, bishop takes e3, and now knight to d1. Taking here wasn't really an option because the king is incredibly weak, and a move like rook to f2 would not only pin the knight but also put a lot of pressure on h2, and now it's very hard for white to find a useful move here. So therefore knight to d1 played, not taking back the bishop, which just captured a rook. Rook h4 played, so black just completely ignores this. He could have taken on d2, but he prefers to play rook h4 and going after the king. So knight f1 played, defense h2, but there is the simple bishop f4, putting more pressure on h2, and black is in a great position. Knight d to e3, then queen to h3, and here actually white decided to resign to end the game. But why? Well, let's take a look. Rook g3 simply loses because of bishop takes g3, f takes g3, and rook f8, and now queen e2 and rook h5. And black is simply in a much better position. Also the coordination of the pieces And white is lacking some pawns, so even if white manages to exchange the queens, there are still a lot of weak spots, a very bad coordination, and white is down a few pawns, as mentioned. So therefore re-signing was logical, especially because white is already down 2 exchanges, so basically rook and rook for bishop and knight. So worse coordination, less pawns, less other material was the price to defend against this brilliant knight takes f4 sacrifice, which was started with f4 here. In my opinion, a brilliant game by Nikita Vitiugov, and if you want to see more of such content, feel free to subscribe and hit the like button. See you.